Homes, Casey's with 2020 Sustainable Manufacturing, and I want you to tell me first, before you get into it a little bit, Casey, a little bit about you and what you do and that kind of thing too, okay? Oh, you're muted. Let's see. Still muted.
Oh, hi, as she said, I'm Casey Lambert. I own the Maverick Realty LLC that I have put under eXp Realty. And then I run a couple of our other businesses. As she said, I work with 2020 Sustainable Manufacturing that builds park models, tiny homes, and a new line that we call micro studios. Everything from that business is built off-site at our factory and delivered. And then we just opened up a new business called First Tier Sheds and Structures, and we offer everything 2020 does, but we've added Old Hickory to our line, which has those unfinished sheds that a lot of people are after, or adding a garage or anything like that. So it's a little bit about me.
I'm Benjamin Goff. I'm the CEO of 2020 Sustainable Manufacturing, and I'm the owner of First Year. So we get the
as I say, I told you I was like, I'm not gonna know.
Here we go. And we are diving into our presentation. All right, so you've got the keyboard right here. And
perfect.
That'll do it.
There you go.
Thank you, thank you. Okay. Now, first I want to say thank you, Terry, and also to Uptown for having us and recommending us. I thought that was very nice of y'all. I know this is going to be a very broad subject that's going to have a lot of questions. We're going to leave a little extra time at the end, and then I know Terry's going to be watching the chat as well as the Q&A as questions come along as well. But just know I'll leave my contact info, and you guys are all welcome to reach out with anything else, and we'll do our best to kind of get to all the questions. So once again, this is going to be over ADUs, and thank you for tuning in tonight. Okay. So first thing that we really want to touch on is if you actually need an ADU. I know there's a ton of fun verbiage out there, tiny homes, ADUs, sheds, everything else like that. Before you go on your ADU journey and see if an ADU is actually right for your property, I really encourage you guys to look at the vision that you have for your structure. And when I say that, it's what is the end goal? Is it to make money off of the ADU? Is it to have mom in the mother-in-law suite, to have a guest house, to have an Airbnb, or do you just need office space and a place to yourself? I think everyone's been a little cooped up, and we've all kind of just wanted that bonus room. So decide exactly what you're looking for, and I would take it from there. You may not actually need an ADU. You may just need a shed for storage. So, and another thing I want to keep in mind is how much space do you actually need? And I'm talking about square footage. So you may just need one room, or you may need a couple rooms. So just keep that in mind anytime you're wanting to add an addition to your home. And then utilities. Do you need electric? Do you need sewer? Do you need water? Or do you just need electric? These are things that you're going to want to check with your local municipality and see what they are going to require for the structure on that particular parcel of land that we are talking about. And so once again, everything we're talking about, please check with your local municipality and get feedback from them as well. There's tons of information on all of their pages as well. Also, when it comes to ADUs, your timeline. do you need this structure in the next month? Or are you a year out when it comes to your design? So if you're looking at the next month, maybe on-site construction may not be the solution depending on the way construction is going right now. So it's just keep that timeline in mind, as well as when you're expecting to start getting back cash flow, if it is an investment to the property. And then I know my realtors can relate to this, and everyone should know their definitions of the difference between real property and personal property. Real property means it has to be permanently affixed to the property and the foundation. That means you cannot move it. So your residential home is going to be the real property. But the shed in the back that got delivered and placed is not going to be real property. That is personal property because you can technically move it. Just like everyone's, I'm sure, has drove past Home Depot, Lowe's, something, and seen their sheds outside. Those are personal property because they can be moved. And the way the definition is written right now, personal property can be moved, and it will always be personal property when it comes to off-site builds being delivered that do not get permanently affixed to the foundation. So some people may have came across detitling a manufacturing home, and those are one of the things I'm talking about. When you detitle a home, you permanently affix it to the property, straps and everything else. I'm sure we can spend a whole nother class on that. So I won't dive too deep with that. But I will say for my realtors, I always recommend, if you see a shed in the backyard, if you see something that can be easily moved, not just picked up with your arms, that you do talk about that in your sales agreement and make sure that it's known if your buyer or seller wants to keep it, take it with them, or whatever it may be. Anything to touch on with that?
Hey, Casey, somebody asked if you can give a brief rundown on what an ADU is, just because there may be some newer agents in there. Look at you. Okay, never mind.
I got you guys. I know.
Good job.
I got you. We're getting there. I promise. I just wanted to give a brief introduction. Benjamin will touch on this stuff.
So, what is an ADU? The state of Oregon defines an ADU as an accessory dwelling unit. Our accessory dwelling unit means an interior attached or detached residential structure that is used in connection with or that is accessory to the single family dwelling. I'm going to jump over to the definition Multnomah County has. So an accessory dwelling unit is a dwelling unit created on a lot with a house attached or manufactured or manufactured home. The second unit is auxiliary to and is smaller than the, I can't see the bottom of it, but dwelling unit. So these two, that's right. Yeah, that's fine. These two definitions are almost identical. And what's happened is House Bill, I think it's 2001, Oregon is, and this is a state legislation, Oregon is trying to incentivize effectively increasing density. So I think it's actually happening in like June 2020.
July 2023.
Okay. They're rolling out a series of, I guess, regulations to allow single family properties to have either ADUs or, duplexes, triplexes, all the way up to, I think, a sixplex. And that depends on the number of people that you have in that area.
Mandatory. That's going to be mandatory by the state. It's something they're looking at to have finalized. I believe it's July of 2023. Multnomah County has gotten ahead of it already, but it's to address the medium cities as well as the large cities by Oregon's definitions, and to increase, as Benjamin said, the density with the medium cities. it's going to allow allows currently single family residents or zoning to have a duplex. And then Multnomah County went kind
And
of,
an ADU
yeah,
or an ADU. So
or an ADU. And Multnomah County kind of went above and beyond and went up to a sixplex with the single family residents.
so
That's a whole nother.
yeah,
fact,
essentially
too.
what we're getting, it's a roundabout way of saying, that the question was, what is an ADU? Well, they don't, like the city and the state, they don't quite know yet. They're still writing some of this legislation to officially define what those things are. And that with some of, the difference between a technical definition in a code book and a marketing term is where a bunch of this confusion comes from. What I want to point out and the difference between the definition between Oregon, the way that Oregon interprets it. Can you click on the screen?
There you go.
Okay. The way Oregon interprets it is it's just an accessory dwelling to a primary structure, right? Or to the single family dwelling. Multnomah, and this is happening across the state. The little bit that they added to this, as far as I can tell, is that the definitions are essentially identical, except that if you look at the second to last line, it is smaller than the main dwelling. So from the state of Oregon's perspective, you can just have another accessory structure. Multnomah is saying you can have an accessory structure, but it has to be smaller than the primary structure. This sort of thing is happening basically across the state. Every municipality is coming up with their own little twist on what an ADU actually is. And then, as we talked with some of the marketing terms, you throw on top of, people start calling everything tiny homes and that kind of thing. Well, that's a marketing term. That's not so much a technical definition. So I think that's probably, they'll be finalizing a bunch of that in the next probably year and a half because they're officially rolling all this out. But did that answer the question? I don't know if they can hear us. The other thing is they're meant to be lived in full time, which that's going to become important later on. It's an accessory dwelling unit. So when Casey was talking about earlier about defining what your use is, if your intention is not to live in the unit full time or to have somebody live in it full time or to rent it out, to another individual and charge them rents, then you may not need an ADU per the definition of what Oregon and your municipality is calling it. You may need just a structure that is maybe an office or something that somebody's not living in full time. So
I saw those chat numbers go up, Terry. Like, is there another question there that we?
Yes, there is.
I saw those numbers going up.
Well, she said, yeah, you sure did answer the question. Thank you, Ben. And then also, how long can you rent an ADU versus an Airbnb versus part for the house?
So short-term rentals are short-term. That's basically the difference. And, when we get a little bit, further into this presentation, when you start talking about what does, what would you call it? I guess permanent residence mean? My understanding, and again, this may be different between counties and municipalities, but my understanding is that it's living in a structure or in a space for 160 consecutive days. That defines full-time living. So, I don't even know if a lease, let's say you have a lease for 3 months with somebody and they're moving out. I don't know whether or not that's considered, full-time, a full-time residence. But with like our park models and our micro studios and our tiny homes, functionally people can live in them. But where municipalities start having trouble with it is where you're living in it over 160 days. Now, short-term rental is, I think it's shorter than that 160-day threshold. So, I think they may be limited because you can go on Airbnb and probably rent out for like a month. You can do a couple months or something like that. But I imagine they have some sort of threshold where as soon as you pass that, like you cannot keep renting that, just living in that building under that agreement.
But that's all that comes back down to the county and also the
Yeah.
particular parcel that you have in mind to put some sort of rental on. And it's just different across the board. They do not have something across the whole state currently that says a rental in Multnomah County is going to be the same in Marion's going to be the same in Lynn. And Lynn's actually pretty tight when it comes to their ADUs. So it's really important that you start at the state level and
Just work your way down.
I'm like, and work your way down and really just hone in to that particular parcel that you are wanting to put the structure on.
Are there any
Yeah.
permit implications? Was a
Oh,
question.
oh yeah.
I'm like,
So you're building,
yeah,
there's a couple different paths here that you're going to take. And this kind of is getting into some stuff that's further on in the presentation. But, you know, if you're building site built construction and it's real property, you're going to have to pull permits. You know, I don't know every single municipality, but you know, you're tapping into city or county utilities. You're making a permanent improvement to a piece of real estate. The county wants to know about it and they want to approve it, or whoever it is, they want to approve it and they want to get paid for it too. So you're going to pay permits if you do a site built, you know, and your intention is for somebody to live in it full time. There's a couple other products that, you know, go around that, but there is a cost to it. You know, you're basically going down the path of doing what, you know, Casey was bringing up, the difference between real property and personal property. So.
Okay. I want to know if that's Chris's dog in that picture too.
No, this is, so this is actually, no, this is actually a park model that we built. So, you know, if you look at this structure here, you may or may not know that it was something that there's a chassis underneath there. And, you know, we built that in my factory and drug it up on a mountain. And this is in Washougal, Washington. And that was a photo that they took for us and sent it over. So I actually don't, you know, it's the owner of.
Yeah,
it's too cute, but
I know he has a dog that looks just like it. That's why.
Gotcha.
Yeah, this particular structure is actually sitting on what is called piers, and then it has skirting around the bottom.
Yeah, and it's tied down. So this thing, even though it's not real property, it can be considered an ADU. And you know, Portland, for example, the city of Portland is allowing, and we'll get into the definitions of a tiny home and a park model, but they're allowing tiny homes and park models to actually go down the pathway of an ADU. And so, and that we'll get into that here in a little bit, but.
Okay. So as you guys have been hearing, there's a lot of verbiage being thrown around of what people consider ADUs or what can be considered ADUs. These are just like very common words. There is, of course, a ton of other verbiage out there, but by definition, they're saying, which this is pretty amazing. They're saying if you finish your basement out, that could be considered an ADU.
Yeah, so there's three classifications basically of an ADU: attached, detached, and it seems like attached, you know, has a kind of an A and a B. One is where you actually come in and you build an addition onto your property. And then the other is where you take a basement and convert it, or, you know, the third floor of a residence or something, or a room, and convert it into kind of a separate living area. I don't think, you know, when you're doing an attached unit or a, you know, you're converting a basement, I don't believe you're gonna have to go through and get like, I don't know.
Like,
They're different, whether or not you have to go get like a new meter for electric or do another tap in for things like plumbing. But if you do a detached one, they're gonna be looking more for it to have its own meter, for it to have its own tap in for waste and water. So,
and that once again goes back to what are you going to use the structure for? if you have a renter back there, you're not necessarily going to want to pay their water bill and their electric and all of that.
Yeah.
You're going to want a separate meter to
Potentially.
account for that. Yeah.
It has to it depends on, I guess, then you're getting into, how long are you anticipating doing this? Because if you're going to flip a property in 2 or 3 years and you want to put an ADU on it, you're not going to collect enough. It's not going to make sense for you to spend $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 to put all that stuff in. If you're more long-term, then yeah, you're probably going to want to have a separate meter.
But it may be required.
That's also too, yeah, they may
So,
require it.
It may be
depending
required.
on where you're at. The concern is, my understanding with the municipalities, they want to do 2 things. They want to increase density, but they don't want to overload the utilities. And that's really what they're concerned with. So where the municipalities really get angry is whenever you go put a unit in and you don't go through the proper channels to, hook up utilities and that kind of thing. Cause you're starting to put additional pressure on the utilities, and they're not really, if they don't know, that half of the properties put an ADU in and are now tapping electrical from like the main house. All of a sudden the main house. Well, yeah. So anyway, yeah, excellent.
Oh, I
Maybe.
saw a question pop up.
Is there another question?
There's a,
Yeah.
you see the chat, it goes up and down.
If you live in Multnomah County, go look up HB 2001. There's a great class saved on YouTube all about the urban growth boundaries and what the new law means for Portland.
Yeah.
Yes.
They've also got, if you literally just type, House Bill
SBS.
2001 Oregon, Oregon actually did a pretty good job. There's 2 PDFs, one for large city and one for small city, that lay all of this information out.
Medium and large.
Or medium and large. Yeah, that kind of lay a bunch of that stuff out. So
Kind of hone in on that. Okay. Oh, that's gonna be you too. Very big on that.
Okay, yeah, sort of, ADU, and we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but ADU is kind of becoming like a catch-all. And so it is, until the municipalities really settle on, what they're defining it as, they're kind of just throwing, we don't know what this is. We haven't quite encountered this. We're just throwing that into the catch-all of ADU. And that, with some of the marketing terms that are getting flying around, means that, they're broadening the definition of what an ADU actually means. The example that I used from Portland, if you go to somebody in, I don't know, outside of Portland and you say an ADU, they're probably going to envision, a site-built structure it's real property, it's permanently attached to the real estate. If you're in Portland, well, that's literally what you think of when you think of a tiny home. So, again, it's confusing, but there is some opportunity in that confusion, because, in Portland, every single family can put an additional structure and start earning rents on.
Yeah.
Without going really through traditional planning and permitting and that expense and that timeline. And, really you're just having somebody build the structure, drag it up on your lot and hook it into utilities. So, it kind of handles the top piece. The bottom piece is, if you're not familiar with the GIS maps that are available on your municipalities' websites, this is a very valuable tool for everybody to be using. If you have a question about what you can do on a property, I worked with a real estate, I'm from Nashville. I worked with a real estate developer in Nashville. I did that for 3 or 4 years. And I spent every day basically scouring GIS maps. And it's essentially like a Google map where you can go on and turn on and off filters to figure out, zoning, flood zones, just all the pertinent information to the property. And so if you have a question about either a property you're looking to buy or that you're interested in, that's a great resource to go to. And so you go onto the GIS map, you find out, are you in a flood zone? Basically all the information that you need to attempt to, build an ADU. And then go, I would honestly, instead of really going through the code books, call the department and ask them, because they're thinking about it. It's something that they're talking about in meetings, and they're going to tell you, yes, I understand that that's what the code book says today, but we're updating it in 2 months or something. And it's going to be changing to something else. So, get as much information as you can on what it is you're actually trying to build there, and if you can even do it. So there's some properties that won't allow you to do an ADU, but
and I would, if there's nothing else you guys take from this class, learn about the GIS map. I cannot tell you how many people I meet who haven't heard of it. Just take the county you're looking at and Multnomah, just Google Multnomah GIS map, mess around on there, put in an address. This is an amazing tool to have, and a ton of knowledge that you don't have to pull a title report to get. And as Benjamin was saying, like looking at the flood zones, I had a customer on a property and they said, well, the zoning in my area said I can have another structure as long as my lot is over X amount. And when I went and pulled the GSI or the GIS, because of the flood zone they were in, that parcel was not eligible for that addition.
well, and that's where it gets, when you start going on the path of the park models of tiny homes and micro studios, you can actually place those on flood zone.
There you go.
Because they're technically not permanently affixed, even though you may be tying them down to the property. So, down in California and other areas, there's entire developments that are built on flood zone that are using park models, tiny homes, or micro studios, where you actually couldn't build real property, but you could still fill that property with rentable units. They're short-term rentals. It might be like a resort, that kind of thing. And, they're able to make use of that space, but it's the same thing for, the ADUs. You may live, your whole backyard might be a flood zone, and it may say it's either, too expensive for you to meet the requirements of building on the flood zone, making it not worth it. Well, there's some other paths that you can take. We'll get onto those in a minute.
Okay, so different types of foundations that ADUs, micro studios, tiny homes, park models, sheds, all of these can come on. And please let me know in the chat if you're not familiar with these terminologies. One of the foundations are skids, and you'll see actually on this unit that's up in the air, this is a old hickory unit, and down below, these are what they call skids. There's no wheels or anything, and it's a whole transport thing that just kind of pulls it up, and it stays on these skids when it's delivered, and it is placed on
And literally
the property.
that's it.
Yeah.
And inside that unit could be a full bath and a kitchen, and that very well could be being used as an ADU on a property.
Yeah.
And on a piece of flood zone, and you're really just doing packed gravel. And there's companies that come out and transport these kinds of things, and they'll just come out and set it. You drag out literally an electric cord, and you plug it in. And if you can hook up to water and waste, then that's an ADU. The one on the bottom left,
Yeah.
that's a park model, and you can see the tongue of a chassis. So that is that chassis actually stays on the structure when it's set. And the caveat to that is the wheels have to stay underneath the unit, which is a strange requirement.
But literally,
in order for it to stay temporary and to be used as an ADU, that the wheels, you pull it up on the property, you remove the axles, you remove the tires, and you lower it down, and you set it on blocking or piers, and you leave the tires underneath it. And that's technically that could be, depending on the municipality, technically an ADU. And you skirt it, and you do a little deck, and that's one. And top left-hand corner, that's a traditional site built. That's on a traditional foundation, probably a poured slab is what that one looks like.
So there's different options depending on, once again, the parcel of what kind of foundation you can have for the structure. And when ADUs kind of first came out, they said they had to be built on site. And that is changing, and they are allowing different foundations. And typically we always tell our customers, like, we can make recommendations, but traditionally our structures are either going on packed gravel or that foundation.
A poured slab.
Yeah, a poured slab, like your typical foundation or traditional for a residential home. And sometimes people put these on dirt, and you'll see in our next couple
There's actually not a
slides.
requirement.
Yeah.
Which is, it's sort of unregulated in that sense. They're not dictating what you have to actually put it on. So you could literally just pull it up, put it in your backyard and do nothing. I wouldn't recommend it.
Oh, I see those
But-
questions going up.
Yeah.
What do we got, Terry?
A couple questions. Are you able to lift these with the crane over power lines from the streets?
Yes, we actually lifted one. So we lifted kind of our definition.
Did you lift it?
No, we didn't lift it. We have a product, we talked about it a little bit, the Micro Studio. It's basically a fully finished interior structure built on skids. And so, and in fact, maybe even all of these products, you could lift over a house or over wire or something. We've done, I mean, our park models are typically 35 to 42 foot long and about 12 foot wide. The livable square footage is just under 400 square feet. Our Micro Studios are typically about 200 square feet. I've not had a park model lifted over a home. I'm pretty sure they can. All they really care about is, the weight and getting the appropriate crane for it. But we have lifted Micro Studios over.
And you really gotta,
It costs about $5,000 depending
Yeah.
on where you're at
Gotta get
and what
transport
they're
guy.
going over. But so you got to pay for transport to the property, and then if you have to lift it over something, I'm not trying to give out any quotes. We don't participate at all in that
don't
aspect
give
of
out
it.
any quotes.
But it costs that customer about $5,000. And in my understanding, that was a pretty extreme. They had to really extend the crane out just because he had about a 5,000 square foot home, single story home, and they had to get it. I mean, they had to lever that thing over quite a long distance to get it in his backyard. But
That's more of a transport question. And
we can basically get them anywhere.
yeah, I'm like, you find a good transport person,
We've drug them
they'll
up
figure
on
them out. Yeah.
steep mountains and picked them over houses. So
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like that first one was literally on top of a mountain. And we try to get some drone footage.
Yeah.
Just to kind of see the extreme places these have been placed. So it's kind of fun.
How safe are the skids, etc.? It is not anchored to the ground, no foundation.
yeah.
I was to say, so I understand where the fear is coming from. They look like kind of like these little pyramids.
Well, you're talking about pads. You're talking about piers and pads.
Piers and pads.
Yeah. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. They were asking about the skids.
No, they
Yeah.
said how. Oh, skids.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
so,
thought you said how safe. Are they?
They're
Piers.
I don't know, as safe as building a floor system on 4 skids. And, we do have, so with our park models, we're required to have these things called hurricane straps. They're very similar to what like a manufactured, in fact, I think they're the same thing that a manufactured home is required to use in tying down the structure. There's not an option, as far as I know, to do that with the skids. So, but again, it's not gonna roll anywhere, and it's not really far off the ground. So
I guess
you could tie them down.
well, no, I'm saying, what is the concern when we're talking about safety? Are you concerned about someone going through the floor system, or are you concerned about it blowing away maybe?
Yeah, it doesn't say, but it also says, are these okay permit wise too?
So you're basically avoiding the building permit process entirely.
Okay.
So because like that park model that's in the bottom left-hand corner, that is, you see an RV driving down the street like a fifth wheel. by definition, that park model is the same thing as an RV.
Mm.
And so, you know, it's built to ANSI A119.5, which is a federal building code. We have building inspectors that come by every 6 weeks and inspect, basically do inspections of whatever we're building. And, you know, they're just, if you're going to use it as an ADU, you will have to fill out the ADU paperwork, but you're going to have a box on there that basically says, you know, you're going to say like, what type of structure is this? And I don't know what they're exactly going to call it, but it's not going to be site built. You know, it might say park model, it might say RV, it might say tiny home, because they're actually developing a technical definition for a tiny home right now.
Okay.
And that's just
anyway,
because they're hearing it so much.
yeah, there's a lot of demand. A lot of people are just doing it anyway. You know,
Yeah.
and
Well,
so they're trying to
here's,
make a path for it.
So you may have answered this question, because Isaac says, does it have to go in the backyard? So I guess an RV wouldn't have to go in a backyard. So I guess it doesn't matter, right?
No, and where, you know, if you're upsetting your neighbors with something, you might have some trouble. You know, I would not park a park model in your front yard.
No.
I haven't seen a specific maybe requirement to put it in the backyard, but I've never seen it happen, and I wouldn't recommend it. Now, if your intention is to use this as an ADU, I mean, I encourage everybody, you know, go through the proper channels. Don't just throw this thing in your backyard. You know, you might require, you know, we had a customer who, you know, they live in a $1.5 million, like a very expensive home, and their elderly grandmother wanted her own space. You know, they ended up getting a hardship permit, and they were allowed to take a park model.
You gotta pause on that.
Yeah.
Look at what a hardship permit is if you were trying to put a family member, mainly. No,
Okay.
it's just
Because that went under that county's, that hardship.
No,
permit.
not difficult.
Okay.
I'm saying just note it.
Yeah.
If you're taking notes, to look up a hardship
Yeah,
permit.
there's certain things that municipalities have to allow a structure like this to be used as an ADU.
Yeah, because you may want, I think the mother-in-law suite, I think we know where the name came from.
Yeah.
You probably don't want your in-laws in your house always.
Yeah,
maybe.
she wanted her own space.
Yeah.
It was driving the son crazy.
Exactly. So keeping your loved ones close, especially during the last couple of years we've been through, a lot of people had to go home, and a lot of people didn't want to send grandma or their mother to any nursing home.
Yeah.
And that was why the hardship permit was like a big reason why it is used, is to support that and keep them close by, in a area that you have the space for the ADU, but your HOA or your development or your subdivision may not typically allow it. So looking at those different options for that particular parcel, but a lot of people do use hardship permits when they need the 18-year-old son to move out and he still needs to be at home for X, Y, and Z, but they want to give him his own space and make sure that he is still being able to take care of himself while he's still needing to be close to the house, if that makes sense. Okay, so this is gonna be my department because I like marketing and sales. The different things that you can use an ADU for, or what people are using them for. I think we've touched base on the rentals, the Airbnbs, the experiences. You're going to somewhere pretty like this, and maybe you're just taking an art class or having a wine tasting. They're also being used as just office spaces or bonus rooms. I'm sure the real estate agents have seen that word a lot, or a home gym, mother-in-law suites. Hunting cabins were really big with some clients in Montana, where they just had bare land that clients come out and pay to go hunting, and it's easier to keep them on the property than haul them in town every single day to a hotel. And then also just a vacation home. A lot of people have really beautiful pieces of raw land that they have bought, but they don't have somewhere to stay when they go out there. They're hauling out the RV, and they're wanting something to put on the property. That's where these units kind of become fun. And it's just, once again, and I'm probably going to become repetitive with this, but you have to check with your county, and you really should check with the particular parcel that you're wanting to put these units on. A big little quote that I came up with during COVID was to keep your house a home. I think a lot of people experienced staying home a lot longer than anticipated, not being able to go to the office, not being able to go to the gym. And those typical times that you would leave the house, or even get away from the kids a little bit, or the kids get away from you for a little bit. I encourage everyone to keep their house a home. And if you need that extra bonus room, whether it be a classroom or an office, that you're still able to step away from, I guess, just the internal part of your personal life.
Yeah. So next one. Before getting to this, it looks like another question jumped up.
Not kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, I don't know. Anything you want to cover before we move on?
This says, do you have any idea of how much resale value these produce? Let's say a 120 square foot detached bonus room versus a 200 square foot micro studio.
So, you're getting down the path of, how is it built? So if you're, and actually this is a decent segue kind of into this. This column here, this is your site built, manufactured, or modular, attached or detached ADU. This is kind of your traditional ADU right here. So your ownership, it's real property. You're going to have to pay annual property taxes on it. It's a traditional building process typically, even if you're going down like the modular path. This is much more where historically building and planning departments kind of are comfortable with, this is their bread and butter. If you go down this path, you're making an improvement to a piece of real estate. It's real property. So I can't tell you how much, it's going to increase it by, but you're going to improve the value of your property, by going down this path. This one over here, which is, this is more of your personal property. A lot of these products here can serve the same function as your site built, ADU, and they all of them actually can be classified, except for this one over here, which is just an unfinished shed. But all of them can also be classified as ADUs. These will not actually increase the value of that property. Now you're still going to have a, let's say like the park model right here. This one, I think probably retailed at like 100,000. You keep it for 5 or 10 years. There's, a decent place. Actually, I don't know how realistic that is, but a decent, maybe place to get comps or something like that. There's a place down in Salem called Hope Valley that is nothing. It's nothing but these park models, and they sell them as the same way basically you do real estate, even though it's not real estate, and they appreciate in value. Now, I can't say that that's going to happen, or that's going to come into the calculation maybe with like a lender. If you're buying a house and you're looking at the house and it's got one of these in the backyard, the lender is not going to include this as increasing the value. You think it will?
I'm like,
well, they might, but it's personal property. It's not real property.
But by definition, any improvement to the property.
Yeah, we have this argument all the time. Think of this as a hot tub.
And a hot tub would be marketed on all of our MLS systems.
Well, I'm more conservative, I guess, but I would say that this is not making.
Talk to a realtor.
Yeah, well,
I'll
okay.
talk to a realtor.
I would say that's not improving the value of your real estate. Now, it is an asset. It is a, let's say you have it for
And
10
an
years,
asset on the property would
but
be
it's
an
not
improvement.
real property. So that's my only distinction. But, you'll still have an $80,000 asset after 5-10 years, depending on, I mean, they're not like plummeting in price. I mean, you still have a fully livable 400 square foot, basically apartment in your
So,
backyard.
a garage isn't included in the square footage of a home.
It's still real
However, a
property.
garage would increase the value of
Still
a home.
real property, permanently affixed to the property.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
we'll
anyway,
go over
I
that
hope that,
later.
we have this argument.
Twice.
This
a
is
week.
sales and this is operations. So that's the argument. But so
Did you answer his question?
I think I did. Yeah. If you're going down this path, you're going to, the traditional path of an ADU, pulling permits, submitting plans, having a builder come out and build on the property. You're going to be increasing the value of the property. This path is a little, I mean, this is an asset. It's a personal property asset. It's not real property, but
Now,
if you bundle that in,
I'm
then
like, on the real estate side,
Yeah.
I have seen people walk a property and say, you think he'll leave that lawnmower? And you just put it on the sales agreement,
Yeah,
bundle it into everything.
I would argue this maybe a little bit, but anyway.
But an improvement to the property, and if you have a good real estate agent, they'll make sure they market your bonus room right, or that you have a detached office or whatever it may be.
I guess we're getting the semantics. The question was, is it going to increase the value of your property? Not increase how much you can sell the property for.
I would consider it an
So,
improvement. I guess
anyway,
it'd be a
okay.
personal opinion right now.
You
guys can vote in the chat.
Yeah. So, I'll walk through some of these. Basically, this line here is your dividing line, right? So the biggest decision you're trying to make when looking at an ADU is your use case. If you're going to be living in it full time, if you're going to be charging somebody rent, if your intention is to increase the value of the real estate, then, this is your pathway. If you're trying to satisfy the need, like I need office space in the backyard, or actually in some cases they can actually, through like Portland, for example, you could put one of these products in your backyard, go through the ADU process, and then rent this out to somebody.
Oh, like $1,200 a month.
I mean, yeah, for actually pretty good rent. I mean, these park models, they're basically $400. They have full kitchens, full baths, a deck, full size appliances, a full bedroom. It's basically in a 400 square foot apartment. And yeah, you can rent that out for, especially in a very high density area with high rents. I mean, you can produce some pretty damn good rent. And you order this, with us or a manufacturer, you could have it in 6 months, as opposed to this here, you may be looking at like a year and a half, to actually, it's like, the question we ask people is, when do you want it to arrive at your property? And then we work backwards from that. So if you're asking that question on a product like this, it's, well, how backed up with COVID is the planning department? And then how many contractors are available? It might take a little bit longer. These, because they're built in another area and they're not having to go through that planning and permitting process, you're going to be much faster, I guess, and cheaper, to get something like this put on your property. Another big decision you need to take a look at is, the tax implications. This is going to increase your property taxes. These will not. And I'm not giving tax advice, by the way, but just to clarify, I've not seen anywhere where putting a product like this on your property actually increases the, it's not a tax, it's a personal property. It's not real property. So by definition, you're not paying property taxes. The building process.
So make sure you keep that recording the last 30 seconds.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, just scratch that now. The building process, traditional building, building site construction plans and permits. Over here, these are built off-site. You may or may not be required to have permits. So for example, our micro studios, which is this product right here. Generally in Oregon, you can put this is technically a shed. And this is a fully finished interior with, vinyl flooring, wall covering, paint, insulation, all that. This can be used as an ADU and actually go through the entire ADU application process. But all you're really doing is pouring a pad, ordering a unit like this from somebody, and then it arrives and you hook it up to utilities. The size. So typically on your site built side, it's a function of the square footage of the primary residence. So you're going to have one of two, typically I see one of two ways they determine this. They'll say an ADU can be no bigger than 600 square feet. And that's just it. You can do anything under 600 square feet. Or
and I've seen that.
Yeah.
So when I was once again, the 2001 bill we were talking about, I believe it was between 800 and 900 square feet.
Is where they wanted it.
Yeah. But once again, then you have Multnomah County that wants the ADUs square footage to be less than the primary structure on the property. Yeah. So if you have a home that's 900 square feet, you're going to need, in Multnomah County, you're going to need your ADU to be under that.
Yeah. And and so I guess that's another one, is like Multnomah County is literally saying, we don't care how big it is, as long as it's strong, as long as it's smaller than the primary residence.
And Oregon's saying, we don't care how big it is.
The other is they'll say it cannot be larger than 25% of the square footage of the main structure. Park models have to be under 400 square feet. Actually, under 400 square feet. Tiny homes, which is actually getting a definition in Oregon, is under 400 square feet and less than 8.5 feet wide. And your tiny home and your fifth wheel RV, these are the same thing as far as the way they're regulated. This product right here, under 400 square feet, but can be wider than 8.5 feet wide. And then really with your sheds and your micro studios, your limitation, 200 square feet, no permits in almost everywhere in Oregon. There's some rural area, or like the counties will allow 400 square feet, but really you're just limited by your transportation. The biggest limiting factor is going to be what you can transport.
And I feel like we definitely touched on majority of the bottom
The rest
half.
of it.
Yeah, and I want to leave time for people to ask questions as well. If you know me, you already know I can talk. So when Terry said fill an hour, I said no problem.
Yeah, so if we can jump into some questions. I mean, we have actually touched on quite a few of those.
Yeah, as I say, we touched on most of those. But before we go into questions, I do want to say thank you to Lawyer's Title as well as Win and Uptown for hosting us. Maverick Realty is my LLC, and then we have the first tier that we touched on in 2020. And then a lot of the photos you guys saw today and a product that first tier sells is these old hickory sheds. They are unfinished, but they come in a bunch of different styles. So if you have a house that needs a garage and it didn't come with it, that's kind of stuff they can get built for you, and storage.
They can
and
do
everything
on-site
else.
as well.
Yeah.
And go through that, that process of going through counties and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it is site-built construction.
And they can do, the on-site and the off-site, which is awesome that they offer that, and they have a great turnaround time. But I just wanted to make sure that I thanked everyone's business that brought us here.
Yep.
Really.
I was
So,
going to go back
Oh.
to that.
okay. So,
All right, so we have like 1 minute, but we'll stay on as long as we need to.
yeah.
Questions for anyone? I was gonna say, I looked on your website. It had some pretty cool, I love seeing the pictures of what you can do, like the one on the lake, things like that. You don't have any of the inside pictures, do you?
Which website are you on?
She's on first tier. I know she's on first tier.
Yeah, you built the website.
I built that
If
website.
you go to 2020 SMI,
Yeah, we have some
.com.
interiors on
There's
that
some
as well.
interiors
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I think it's so cool to see because there's like that. That's amazing.
So
And
Right?
those are
that's an interior. That's actually our
Mascot.
dog.
I just
Brody up
Mascot
here.
at
can't
top.
even believe that. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, this is in a park model.
yes.
This is 400 square feet, and yeah, if you go to our website on 2020, that's going to have primarily the park models,
Yeah,
and
the
tiny homes
interiors.
and the micro studios.
I do have a ton of interior photos, and I am in the middle of keeping my head on my shoulders, as well as trying to redo all the socials and a couple other marketing things. So
Yeah.
yeah, you get it.
Well, and I think though, when you say 400 square feet for people who are used to living in like a 3,000 square foot house or whatever,
Yeah.
it sounds small, but when you see the picture here, you're like, oh my gosh, you've got an upstairs, you've got a downstairs. It's just
that, and that's the number one feedback we get is everyone's like, 400 square feet.
Yeah.
And then the minute they step into one of the structures, they're like, oh, I can do this. This isn't bad at all.
right.
As far as how you would like internally sort of think about it more of an apartment
Yeah.
than a home. And so, it has all the amenities that a normal apartment would have. But I guess the alternative is you have a deck and a parking space instead of being in an apartment building. And that's really how we try to describe maybe a park model.
Right.
To somebody.
So cost wise, what's the kind of the range? I know you can go up to whatever price, but like some of your lower, it starts at about what?
So if we're talking about just Old Hickory sheds, a wide variety, all their units are unfinished. And what I've seen is they're typically around anywhere from 3,000 to 30. Just depending on like the
Like how
structure.
big you're getting
How
it,
big you're getting.
windows and doors and that.
And if it's
kind of
on site or off site, and how many added things you're adding to it. Typically our micro studios stay between 20,000 to 60,000. I don't sell fifth wheels, so I'm not going to speak on that.
This product here we don't actually sell, but we included it.
Yeah. The tiny homes in the park model pricing.
They started about 85,
Yeah.
80, somewhere in there. In my opinion, the tiny home, it's much more expensive than your park model. And it's because it's like anything, you take something that's full size and then you make it small, it's more expensive. It's not less expensive. And that's kind of what you end up with. So this is typically 10 or 15% more than something comparable to a park model, but you're getting, here you're getting 8.5 foot wide by like 28 foot long.
Yeah.
Whereas here you're getting like 12 foot wide by 32 foot long. And this is going to be more expensive than this.
Yeah.
So
The range of those typically stay between 85 to about 130. And all that depends on your finishes. And right now it depends on the supply chain as well. If they want to keep messing with lumber prices, we can do this all day.
But and then your site built ADU, that's really going to be location dependent, right? Because it's like the cost of a product like a park model or a micro studio is going to be the same if you're in Portland or you're in Seattle or you're in Southern California. The biggest variable is going to be your transport cost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here it's going to be, is the building department going to charge you 20 grand to submit a building permit?
And 9 out of 10, 9 out of 10 times your on-site builds are actually going to be more expensive.
Yeah, you're looking at 250. I don't want to give quotes or whatever, but 150, 200 bucks a square foot, in like a high density area where there's a lot of demand going on for construction. And
look at gas prices right now.
Yeah.
It just depends on where you are.
So anyway.
Okay, good info. I love them. I think they're so cool.
I know.
Are you guys staying so busy?
We are, yeah.
And we're doing an event that's just kind of called Sales in Summer on February 27th. It's a Sunday and it's going to be from noon till 4 p.m. where we're just going to kind of open up the lot and show all the different things we build and just
Do
kind of
factory tours.
yeah, invite people to come down, see what we do, get inside of all these different units that we have. Obviously, depending on what's on the property.
It just depends on what we're building that day.
Yep. But meet us and everything else. So everyone's welcome to join.
All right, great. Might be even something good if there's some realtors out there that have some clients that might be interested in coming with them. Might be a good thing to do that.
There will be
So-
realtors and lenders and everything else.
Are we going to do the open houses on?
Yeah, we're going to start once it gets a little warmer. It's really hard for me to stand outside in this weather. But usually during the summer, I do open houses every Sunday at the factory to open it up since the production team's not in there. And those have usually been from noon to 3. So we're hoping the 27th, we can get some sun and we can start launching these summer in sales.
And you're located.
So it's it's down in Salem. It's 110 Division Street Northeast.
Okay.
If you just search 2020 Sustainable Manufacturing, it'll take you right to it. And first, we're actually in the same parking lot.
If you're familiar with Salem and you know where the walking bridge is,
it's just north of that.
Yeah,
Literally, if you
it's
walk
right
down
next to it.
if you walk from West Salem to East Salem on the walking bridge,
Yeah.
you're gonna run right
Well,
into our factory.
And the Children's Museum. So
North
I
of
always
the
tell
children,
people the walking bridge and the Children's Museum, there's like a little industrial area that you will see us and our units outside.
Perfect. All right. Are there any other questions out there? I'm the only one asking questions, I guess.
That's fine. I appreciate it. I've seen a couple people have hit their hour, they've dropped off.
Yeah.
I respect it.
Yes, right.
But thank you for taking the time to tune in and thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for coming and reach out. And everybody that's here, thank you for being here. And again, those of you realtors out there that are getting your credit hour, you'll get it probably tomorrow. If not, we're off on Monday, so it'll be Tuesday.
Yeah,
So,
and I did not attach any of my contact information.
well, I know it. They have my
handed it out.
Yeah, they can. I'm happy to give that out to them. Anybody that needs it, shoot me an email and I'm happy to get that out to you. So Lawyer's Title is proud to host this event. So we thank you so much. Thank you so much for having the idea. My WIN group, I appreciate you guys. So thanks for coming. We'll have another event next month, same time.
Sounds good. See you there.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great evening.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.